It's piss aliens, sir. The Oval Office went quiet. The weight of the presidency of the United States of America sunk me into my chair behind the resolute desk. My God, is that why? The head of the CIA, a tall, very severe-looking man, nodded grimly as he cut me off. Yes, sir. That's why nobody has been able to pee. The Oval Office was filled with senior officials from across the military and government. On a large screen display were images of the alien spacecraft hovering in orbit directly over our head. Everyone looked slightly uncomfortable. No human on Earth had been able to pee for the last 3 hours. What's their agenda? How long will they force us to hold our pee? It was time for the head nerd of NASA to speak up. Their agenda is clear, Mr. President. They want to harvest us for our piss. I was uncomfortable, as was every other man and woman inside the White House, but we'd all pushed our discomfort aside to focus on saving the nation, the world itself. 5 hours ago, the piss alien spacecraft had appeared in orbit over the Earth, deploying some kind of electromagnetic radiation that made it impossible for anyone to pee. The question was, what kind of damage would all of humanity holding its pee in do after 24 hours or longer? What about damage to men? Would men be able to hold an erection ever again after several days of holding in their pee? The average bladder can hold between 400 and 700 milliliters of urine. Mine was already reaching capacity. Looking into the face of my vice president and the military chiefs of staff, I could tell that they were too. Normally, a bladder can stretch and hold even more than this maximum limit. But eventually, one of two things would happen. The bladder would burst, or deadly infection would set in. The clock was ticking. Damn it, I want answers. Plans of attack. General Biff Brockjaw, Commandant of the U.S. Marine Corps, rose defiantly. Sir, you need to get those space nerds to give a few of my boys a ride up to that piss alien ship, and we'll blow it up from the inside. We have no way of knowing if it'll work. Now was the time for the commander of the U.S. Space Force to stand. Besides, your boys will be bursting at the seams with piss just like the rest of us. My boys can handle their piss. Being a Marine is 95% dealing with piss. The top nerd nod at NASA once more spoke up, motioning at everyone to calm their rising tempers. Gentlemen, ladies, please, we're on the same side. We know that the piss aliens are trying to harvest us for our piss, letting us fill up like balloons before descending for a golden harvest. We can get your boys up to that ship. Maybe a nuke would do the job, but they'll have to pee so bad they'll be useless by the time they get up there. A hand rose timidly from the back of the room. The Secretary of Health, a mousy lady still unused to being in the Situation Room at the height of a crisis, became beet red when everyone turned to stare at her. Please, Secretary, go ahead. I tried to encourage her, ignoring the discomfort in my loins as I crossed my legs. Yes, Mr. President, sorry, we can try catheters. Every major hospital has them and uses them in cases where urination becomes impossible due to blockage or infection. But we won't have enough for the entire country, not even close. Ma'am, will it get the piss out of my boys long enough for them to get the job done? General Brockjaw set his steely gaze on the secretary. Yes, the real concern is time. Bacteria multiply exponentially. Within 24 hours of holding your urine, you can already set the stage for a UTI. Kidney damage will follow, with a full-blown kidney failure in just a matter of days. Long as you can relieve my boys just enough to get the job done. Wait, I motioned at the general to pause. What about the rest of the country? Sorry, we should immediately ramp up industrial production of catheters, but the ones we have now, probably less than 10% of the population. My God, I minored in piss in college. I was well aware that urinary stasis could develop within a matter of days. This would atrophy the bladder, which is a normal muscle, just like any other. And if you don't use it, you'll lose it. But surely the piss aliens had a plan for that. They wouldn't just let bladders weaken and lose all that precious piss, as everyone involuntarily relieved themselves. I turned to my vice president. I'm putting you in charge of this. Have the medical industry ramp up immediately and get catheters to as many people as possible. Prioritize military and first responders. Now I turn to the head of NASA. And get me a ship as fast as you can to put Marines on that piss-filled spaceship. It would soon be a full day since no one on Earth had urinated. Emergency rooms were already crowded with the elderly and the vulnerable. Infections were beginning to set in. In another day or two of holding in their piss, painful urinary tract infections would bloom, causing severe burning and sharp pain. We'd prioritized emergency medical and police personnel, as well as the military for catheters, but we're now rerouting what dwindling supplies we had to these ER victims. But the list of those affected would only increase exponentially the longer everyone held in their pee. The question still burned. We knew holding in your pee would damage men's sex organs. How long until every man on Earth was rendered impotent? 22 hours into the global piss crisis and my stomach was beginning to hurt from holding it in. I could see the same pain in the brave faces around me as men and women placed frantic calls to agencies all across the world. From the chaos, the head of NASA rapidly approached me. "Mr. President, we can repurpose a SpaceX Dragon capsule to deliver a team of saboteurs to the alien craft, but it'll take 24 hours to prep the mission, another 24 for them to reach the craft. 2 more days? After 3 days of everyone holding in their pee, the bladder will have stretched so much it may no longer be able to contract and release urine. We can't afford to wait." He shook his head sadly. "There's nothing we can do. This isn't like boarding an airplane. We have to prep a rocket and, well, there's the issue of consent." The last bit took me by surprise. Consent? Well, yes, legally speaking, we can't just repurpose a Dragon capsule like that. It's SpaceX property. We need permission from Elon. "Eminent domain, seize the capsule. This is a species emergency, in case you hadn't noticed." There was a cough, drawing both of our attentions. It was the General of the Air Force, his phone moments ago pressed against his ear, now resting on his cheek. "Mr. President, that won't be an issue. Mr. Musk was apparently storing large quantities of his own urine at his emergency safe house. The piss alien struck minutes ago. There were no survivors." The NASA chief went white as a sheet. My God, if they struck his safe house, New York, Dallas, all of Florida, Paris, all the most piss-drenched cities in the world could be next. I grabbed the panicking man by the scruff of his shirt and shook him violently. "Get a grip on yourself. Every minute that goes by holding in your piss, you're damaging your pelvic floor muscles. Your urethral sphincter could give out any moment now, giving you lifelong incontinence issues. Is this the fate you want for the rest of America, for the world? No. Then get me that damn spacecraft ready." It was officially 3 days since the arrival of the piss aliens, 3 days since a single human on Earth had urinated. As we predicted, the piss aliens did in fact have a plan to prevent people's urethral sphincters from simply giving out and soiling themselves. Whatever electromagnetic radiation they were giving off to prevent people from peeing was working to stiffen the urethral sphincter and the surrounding muscles. Yet, the bladder itself was remaining flexible enough to continue stretching past its normal volume limit. Also, like we predicted, the piss aliens were somehow preventing bladders from rupturing, which usually happens after it's stretched to almost 3 times its maximum volume. Right now, most people were at the level that the bladder typically reaches when you sleep overnight, twice its normal size limit, or about 1,000 to 1,400 milliliters. They wanted our bladders whole and full of valuable piss for them to reap. Catheters were proving a very temporary stopgap solution, and not everyone had access to them. We had to rotate their use frequently, meaning lots of disinfection. Children were now a high priority. Children's bladders were smaller than adult bladders, but you could estimate how much urine they could hold by taking their age plus 2 and then multiplying that by 30 milliliters. On a screen, from deep in the basement of the White House, I and the rest of my senior-most officials watched a squad of brave Marines boarding a repurposed Dragon capsule. They carried with them a nuke, and each man and woman knew that this would likely be a one-way trip. Their bladders had been recently emptied thanks to the use of a catheter, but infection had already set in. They'd need strong doses of antibiotics after holding in their pee for over 3 days to prevent a painful urinary tract infection. In a way, they were the luckiest people on the planet. I'd give anything to not feel like I had to pee anymore. But were we really saving humanity? Would human men ever again achieve an erection after such a long time holding in their pee? It was 4 days since anyone on Earth had urinated, and thousands of miles above our head, the brave squad of Marines was penetrating into the piss alien ship. This was a stealth mission, so there was no way to communicate. The only way we'd know if they'd been successful was if the people of Earth could once more urinate freely. Usually, the bladder would have long ago overridden the muscles preventing the urine from escaping it. This was hardwired into our brains and happens completely outside of our control in order to avoid a catastrophic bladder rupture. After sitting in the bladder for so long, the very warm urine had become a happy breeding ground for bacteria, practically a perfect environment for them to reproduce out of control. If the bladder burst, it would spill that bacteria all along the inside of the pelvic area, infecting large amounts of tissue with very aggressive bacteria. Sepsis was inevitable, and so was death. How long would the piss aliens make us hold our pee? Just how full could our bladders possibly get before catastrophic bursting? An X-ray of my own, taken mere hours ago, showed it had already expanded to 2.6 times its normal size. If my bladder stretched just 15 to 20% more, it would lead to a catastrophic rupture. Even now, I, along with all of humanity, were already doomed to long-term incontinence issues. With the bladder so stretched for so long, it would be permanently weakened. A red phone rang. Our only direct line to the outside world. The Secretary of State nervously picked it up. Yes, okay, I'll inform the President. My bladder was bursting. Each moment that passed, it stretched a tiny bit more, edging ever closer to total failure. Mr. President, the plan was successful. The bomb should detonate in… She checked her watch. Approximately 30 seconds. A cheer erupted from across the room, though quickly hushed at the sober realization that the Marines would not be making it back. I put a hand on the Marine Commandant's shoulder. I'm sorry for your men. Mr. President, they died defending our country from the piss-stealing aliens. I couldn't be more proud of them. Somewhere in orbit, a bright flash of light erupted in the void of space. The piss alien ship burst apart, its vast stores of stolen intergalactic piss from countless species subjugated and destroyed before us, erupting into space. Debris from the massive ship scattered around the world, cascading down onto 8 billion humans in a giant flaming golden shower. The people of Earth urinated freely for the first time in over 4 days. Bladders stretched very nearly to the absolute bursting point, finally relaxed as they were freed from the piss alien electromagnetic weapon. The bacteria-rich urine would infect the entire length of the urethral passage, resulting in an epidemic of extremely painful urinary tract infections. Many men would experience long-term difficulties with erections due to the incredible psychological and physical strain placed on their loins after holding in their pee for so long. But humanity would bloom once more with little permanent damage. For now, the people of the Earth cheered. Now go watch What's It Like to Have COVID, or click this other video instead.